One. Well, hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a great word to start with, and the word is something that we all know what it is, and I don't know if we've ever been accused of it or not. So I want to start with the word, and then we can unpack that today with our guest. And the word is empathy. And I hear it a lot, and I'm seeing it a lot less than I hear it. I don't see people being nearly as empathetic as maybe they think they are. So it might be a blind spot for you if you're listening, because you might have already said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm so empathetic." Well, I always encourage people, and I encourage myself. I ask people around me, "Am I empathetic?" And my wife says, "You're so empathetic with everybody except me." And so I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what the heck is up with that?" So I found an expert in this, and I'm honored to be hanging out with Krista Hull. How are you today?
I am very good. I'm not sure about that expert, but uh-oh, that's scary.
Well, you're the founder and executive director at Redeem and Restore Center. So fill us in on what the Redeem and Restore Center is.
It is a nonprofit based out of Waukesha, and it is something that I lead in gathering many different people together so that we can walk alongside others and love, restore, and support them as they're rebuilding their lives from being exploited and trafficked, and especially women. And we also have a group home where women can come for up to 2 years to build a foundation to and start a new life. And so I get to work with a lot of different people, business people, retired people, young people, again, utilizing people's different gifts to help build up people that haven't gotten that kind of support before so that they can live a life like we are all meant to live.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty cool. And being a nonprofit, then you've pretty much given over to, I mean, it's always funny when you think about nonprofit because everybody thinks there's no money required. Nonprofit means you don't need money. Obviously, as a nonprofit, we're always looking for financial things, but you focus on, training and leading your team. And so we're going to talk about that today because again, as we have people all over the world that are listening right now. And again, for people that, think that they're empathetic, they think they have empathy. Do you have like a simple definition, Krista, about what empathy is for you and what that looks like in your world?
Well, when I explain it, it is, can you put yourself in someone else's shoes to kind of understand why they're thinking, responding, acting in the way that they are, to see things as they see them? Again, we can't have their whole life experience, but just at least in that moment to try to understand what's coming out their mouth or how they act.
Yeah, wow. See something as they see it. So I think that's a great spot for us to start as a leader, if you're listening. Are you able to see what your team sees? Are you able to see what your customer sees if you have customers? I mean, you guys serve, people that are in tough spots, so you don't really call them customers. What do you call the people that you serve on a regular basis? What's your term at the Redeem and Restore Center for your guests, I guess I'll call them.
Yeah, for the guests, we call residents, but then it's
Resident.
also for the staff.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Yep.
and then also for the team of volunteers that I work for, just regular people with all their stuff. And again,
Yeah.
because of what we do, we actually attract people that have gone through lots of stuff as well, and maybe still carrying a lot of that as well.
Sure. Well, and I hear this all the time, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Chris. I hear people in corporate America say, leave your personal stuff at home. Like you can separate those two. That seems really hard to do. If I just had a fight with my wife or I just got cut off in traffic or whatever it is, I'm struggling with an illness with one of my family members or whatever. I mean, we don't know what the other person is going through. And it's got to be tough if you're dealing with residences, you're dealing with a team, and then you're dealing with volunteers they come to work, we'll call, we call this work for the sake of the conversation. They come to work from a tough spot sometimes. So do you see people struggling to kind of differentiate or keep their work at home or keep their home, at home? That's got to be hard in your world, I'm guessing.
Right. That comment is so ridiculous because, like I say, even how we walk alongside women is we meet them where they're at. We walk alongside them because physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, spiritually, those are all different parts of our humanity, what makes us human. So you say leave out the emotion and go to work or do a task like, oh, cut that part of your humanity out and then function. I mean, that's just stupid,
Sure. Yeah.
asinine. Anyhow, yes, you can't. But the more healthy you are, the more of in tune with your emotions and the awareness of how things affect you. Like people say, that they're not racist or they don't have, biases. Well, we all do. And another nice way we could say it is we have filters. Our filters are built up of from our experience, how we've experienced life. So now these lenses, how we see things. Well, so that means everything that we do affects everything that we are, how we respond, how we hear. I mean, we
Yeah.
even twist people's words when we hear them. So, not taking your emotions with you, it's hard. And so, especially like, what if your spouse lost their job and now you go to work and I got to do my job, but you're thinking, wow, my job isn't going to pay for all my debts and I have all this. How it is hard. We've all been there. We've all had multiple instances where we go to work and we have some heavy weight on us and you do your best. You try to balance of like tuck it away to like put in a pocket for later because
Sure.
we can disassociate on some level or we can say we'll
Okay.
save that for later, but it's
Okay.
still going to be churning inside us, affect
Sure.
us how we might be a little on edge, when someone talks to us,
Right.
or more distant when someone talks to us because our mind is partly somewhere else. So it's just impossible.
So you bring up a great word that I want to kind of deal with, disassociation. Is that healthy to do? Because I feel like that can be healthy or it can kind of move into the unhealthy spot. So where do you land on that disassociation piece? Is it healthy for us to be able to separate ourselves from that at times?
At times. So it's a natural thing that we all do. And so there's actually in psychology, there's this continuum scale of dissociation. There's the daydreaming, and then a little bit more intense, and then your different personalities around different people, and then full on different personality alters that come out from lots of trauma. But we all have some level of dissociation that we use at different periods or seasons in our life or moments. And so, yes, dissociation can be helpful to survive a circumstance or for a moment, or it can help us compartmentalize a few things, like, ah, yes, but if we're healthy enough, mental health, emotional health enough that we can say, okay, this is a struggle. It doesn't have to be handled right now, so I can just put this on the back burner. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not gonna just pretend it isn't there. I'm just gonna wait till later and then move on, even if it is a pressing thing. So there's so many different levels of dissociation, but dissociation, you can be talking to someone, having a conversation, and you're talking, and someone's talking and talking and talking and talking, and you're like, okay, I'm done listening, and you're somewhere else, right? That's dissociation.
Yeah.
So again, just it sometimes it's these little silly things that happen, but sometimes they're there for really healthy ways to get through a situation to cope, or again, wait for a better time to deal with it. It's when we dissociate and then we continue to dissociate. They're like, nope, not dealing with that. Like every time a conflict comes up, I
Sure.
dissociate and pretend it never happened. So then now we're
Gotcha.
making choices of it's no, I'm never going to deal with that. So
Yeah.
on the surface, dissociate can be very helpful, but then we have to remember we start making choices based on that dissociation, and that's where we can get ourselves into more trouble.
Gotcha. So denying it versus is obviously there's disassociation. I'll deal with it later, or I'll deal with it in a different area versus denial. I'll never deal with it. I think those again are important distinctions there. So thank you for sharing that. You keep bringing up emotions, and again, this is one of those words that I think a lot of people wish weren't in business. You know, because it seems like an oxymoron to have emotion in business. And, we do a ton of work with EQ and DISC, and emotional intelligence is like becoming very, front and center in business. So, from a training and leading your team, I mean, if somebody comes in emotional in your team, how do you deal? I mean, if somebody's listening and they have a highly emotional person on their team, are there any tricks or tips or things that you've worked on to try to help people through that? Because again, disassociation we talked about, but denying it. What else is there if I'm highly emotional and I come to work a lot emotional? What offerings would you have for somebody like that?
Well, I'm never good with tips and tricks, but I
Sorry,
would
that didn't
say,
sound right. I
like
just
with your team and with no, I'm just bad. I'm not good with those little things. I'm always
sure,
more long-winded.
sure, that's fine.
Oh, but with emotion, I think with a team is good communication, right? And management and listening and teaching each other listening skills and also recognizing. So I love using Strength Finder a lot and seeing and then what someone's really good at and then recognizing that in each other, but then also as you work with a team regularly and if you really work with other people, you sometimes start to see some of those weaknesses or issues where they struggle, and we can't fix them. They can't
Sure,
fix them. They're going to be weaknesses, but if we can build good communication and then build some type of a healthy business relationship and communication where we can know how we can trust each other and be authentic with one another so that if someone is more emotional, they that you can give them that little bit of space, not like an hour, oh, let's just sit down and have a heart to heart at work, right? But hey, I see you. I see you're struggling. Anything you want to tell me, I'm so sorry. And then to validate and let them be heard without,
yeah,
having strong boundaries so you're not letting them go and on, but just open it up to let them know that you hear, you see, you care and communicate, but then okay, let's redirect now and let's take care of business because you can't leave the emotions off your shoulder, and some people are more emotional. um I was told when I did the was it the strength finder? I was told when I did that test with someone, she was like, wow, I can't believe empathy isn't one of your top strengths because of what you do. And I'm like,
sure,
really? Oh, I'm very empathetic for very specific things or for
sure,
like a moment or for a season, not in general. Like I can
yeah,
be empathetic in the moment in a conversation, but not in for everything. So, but anyone can be empathetic. And I think that's going back to our word empathy
yeah,
in using that peer communication and building trust in a team. That is going to help work through to keep containment of too much or runaway emotions or whatever is again validating one another, being able to be seen and heard with parameters, with good boundaries so that you can continue to do the work that you need to do.
yeah. Well, and I think this is where like blind spots come in because somebody may think they're very empathetic, somebody may think that people shouldn't come to work with their emotions. There's these blind spots that we have as leaders, there as business owners, as part of the team. And I think that it's really helpful for us to have those tough discussions at times, because if we can't talk about them at work, we can't pretend they're not there. So on one hand, we can't talk about them, and on the other hand, we pretend they're not there. I mean, that's neither spot ends well. So you're leading a team. So is there, how do you work with people that come in? Maybe they're having a bad day. I mean, what are some things like on your world? How do you deal with that as a business leader?
Well, I'll use me as an example, first of all, is so I'm a very driven person and like
Sure.
to be
Yep.
busy and I focus, I got to do that. And so in that, right, I can run over people or push people. So that's, one of my things. I could be called a bulldozer sometimes. Sometimes that's needed, but other times
Yeah.
it causes a problem, right? So
Right.
sometimes I can be busy or I'm so in tune of what I have to do that I'm not paying attention. So I know that's a weakness for me. So for me specifically, I try, I don't always, but I really try to at least pause here and there to like survey the feeling, survey the attitudes with the team or with the people that I'm with and try to grab from the unspoken or what
Sure.
I'm seeing under the surface so that if it is something, do I have to address that or can I keep going right now and maybe that nothing I need to address and I can keep moving forward. So with my example, right, and seeing that in other people too, let's see, I'm trying to think of another example on that. I guess I kind of just lost it.
That's okay. I was,
Oh.
in emotional intelligence training, one of the things that is really important, like you just said, is to really check in with your emotions. I think that a
Mm.
lot of people listening, they don't necessarily do that. And I encourage people, if you want to build your EQ, check in with yourself on a regular basis. It could be a couple times a day, and it could just be, what am I feeling like right now? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I nervous? Am I scared? Am I comfortable? You come up with these emotions, and then the more that you identify with those and are able to point those out, you just become more self-aware so that you're a better person on the team. I love hanging out with emotionally intelligent people that are aware of what's going on around them. They're aware of maybe how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking, and they genuinely care about it. And it's just really
Mhm.
more, we have these givers in the world and we have takers in the world. The takers, they're really not that aware of what they're doing. They struggle with empathy, like we talked about. And so I just think that checking in with your emotions on a regular basis is a healthy thing to do. And I got to believe in the spot that you're in when you're talking about human trafficking, this is life and death. I mean, this is not just a paper cut. This is like serious life and death things. So you're like at the forefront of that piece. So somebody might come to you and they're in trauma. That's like, this is crisis mode for them. That's got to be really hard for you to like, I mean, you come alongside them, you try to empathize with them, but it's got to be hard to just sit with them at times, especially being driven like you were talking about. Is that do you find that as a challenge for your personality at times?
Yes, like if I had to do it all day, every day, well, I shouldn't because it's not good for me. It's not what I'm
Yeah,
made to do. I
sure. Yep.
definitely do it. And I actually am scheduled to do certain things at certain times. And so it's that same thing, even checking with the team. It's like I acknowledge that I just focus. I get very intentional. What am I here to do right now? And so then I just block out, just like I do other things. But at that moment, it is slower because it is definitely more slower pace, which I don't like. But yet
Yeah.
in those situations, I do like it, but it's not all the time, every day and all week, because then I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't. But for certain periods, I do love it because I love to, because again, why I'm here, it's what is done to people, how humans are treated like things and property and not valued and not seen at all different stages of their life. It angers me and it breaks my heart. And so that underlying, because of that, that probably helps again, and then the training that I've done to learn to do my job and
Sure.
to help train our staff as well is is driven by that anger and that empathy, pain for that type of extreme abuse and suffering that I want to stop and I want to hear. And what has been a reward on that, the backside of that is by slowing down and being able to actually enter in someone's space, their story,
Yeah.
and I'm not there to fix. Because we can't fix them. Right? We can barely fix ourselves. We can work on ourselves and improve, but just be there and to be supportive, to listen, to validate, to encourage, to share some opportunities, and then watch them make choices, watch them, and sometimes not good, but sometimes good, and just to be able to see positive impact and change
Sure.
it's a beautiful reward. And so that's even the same thing with the team, right? If
Yeah.
you do take a little time to actually build more of a relationship, a trust relationship with the people you work with, there's more reward in that work life, because you get to see how that affects the whole atmosphere of the business, of what you're doing together, not just them as an individual, but how it affects everybody, because it does, because the
Yeah.
emotions aren't cut out. So when all people can be themselves and do what they're good at, do it together, how much more exciting is that to go to work and do, even if there's some of the work you don't like. Because
Right.
we don't always like everything we do in our job, right? So,
Right.
but if we can work with people that are like and able to have those connections and understand one another so that we can all do our job better, how much more of a better, enjoyable environment that is to be in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's cool. Well, you talked about entering into their story. And when we come back from break, I want to kind of unpack that because I think there's something there that we as leaders are missing. And so we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Krista Hull, the founder and executive director at Redeem and Restore Center in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And we've been talking about a bunch of things empathy related. And, I love the fact that Krista trains and leads her team, and she tries to train them and lead them in a way that they can then, help and train other people. And I think entering into their story, like we were talking about before break, there's, and I'm just going to say it from my perspective, and it's interesting because the first thing that kind of jumped into my mind, Krista, when you said that was like HR violation, and it was like I was thinking about this like there's this line that we as leaders we have to make sure that we don't cross. We have to make sure that we are really within, we don't want to offend people. We don't want to go in areas that people don't want us to go. So that's got to be a really fine line. But I love what you said about entering into their story. How do you do that and still allow the boundaries that you're talking about? You allow people, like you even said, sometimes they make wrong decisions. I mean, how do you allow people to make mistakes while they're on your watch, so to speak? That's got to be really hard.
Yeah, well, so for specifically for me, I mean, it has to be, because it has to be. They're the only ones that can change themselves. They're the only ones that can make the best choice or the okay choice or the bad choice, just like we do in our everyday life. So it's really um, allowing them to learn, right? And
Sure.
just like raising kids, if you've any of you had kids, right? You have your rules and your boundaries and your things of how your home's going to be run, and it might be different than someone else's home, but this is how we're doing it at our home.
Sure.
And they're going to break those rules. They're going to push. They're going to make bad choices. I made a lot of them at mine. Um, And, some of them you learn from, and some of them you keep repeating, and hopefully at some point you begin to learn from them. So it's part of the growing experience for like the ones that, I specifically work with. But I think, like you said, with in the workplace, enter their story, maybe not, maybe, some of your closer coworkers, maybe some, but I would say not so much a story. Again, not going into, because then I would say that probably would freak out a lot more people. Like, I don't want to enter their story. Like, they're going to ask me
Right.
things and I'm not going to have the
Right.
answer. I don't know what to tell them. Right. So
Right.
that's probably freaking. out more than anything. But I think another way to say it for like in the workplace though would be just what we already said is just to, wow, I see you're hurting. I'm really sorry you're hurting. Oh, I'm really sorry you're having you're struggling through this right now. And oh, I get you have some financial struggles. That's got to be really rough. I'm sorry. Just those things again are
Yeah,
validating. Just those things are allowing them to be seen and feel okay. They can help them feel more secure. So you don't have to go deeper than that in their story in the workplace, but just acknowledging again the humanness of who we are and how it
sure.
affects us and seeing that is very helpful in the workplace. But yeah, a little different than the depth of where we go
Yeah.
the resident.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, what if somebody wants to go deeper? I mean, if you have somebody on your team that needs to talk this through, I mean, do you allow that? Do you encourage it? Does that end generally end in a positive way? I'm just curious because again, there is a line, but I think the line's different for different people. Different personalities allow us to do different things. There's people, and then there's kind of more fact people, and the
Mhm.
fact people are engineer brained, so to speak, and they don't run emotions and business. You got to keep those as far apart as possible. But there's people like you and I on disc that are high in the people side. And that's where I think, there are plenty of people listening, Krista, that are okay doing that. So is that work for you guys at Redeem and Restore? If somebody needed to go deeper with you, are you open to that?
Well, definitely, because it is who I am. And I think it really is the overarching, like we see ourselves as a ministry. And so the people that come to work, it's ministry. And so we're all in, like every part of us, we get it. And so that's why we see the struggles in one another. And so I encourage all of us to share with one another, hey, if we're struggling, hey, can we pray for you at least? Just say,
Sure.
you don't have to go into detail, if they
Yeah,
want to, then yeah, then we definitely talk every once in a while. There are times when it's appropriate, when it works in the schedule, that we definitely sit and listen, talk, and then most often even pray with one another because
sure.
that's just who we all are. And so that's
Yeah.
the dynamic that works there. So there really isn't a line that we cross here in we don't have that. I am the HR department and there is no line really. It's
Yeah.
unless, well, I take that back. Some people can go pretty detailed. So, okay, maybe there are some lines, but in general, talking
Sure.
about a topic, I'm open to listen and to hear. And obviously, I try, I'm working on this to not always give my opinion unless I'm asked, but
Sure.
that's a struggle.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, and I think from the discussion that we've had and from what I've heard from and talked with you in the past and listened to you share, you're emotionally aware of what's going on. So you have self-awareness, so you're able to manipulate, or I shouldn't say that, operate in ways that are really positive for people because there's people listening right now, Krista, that want to stay as far away as possible from that line. I don't want to know anything that's going on my team. I don't want to
Yes.
know, type of thing. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but because of the research that's done, 3 out of 4 people that quit their job do so because of their boss. I think that there's something to be said for the people that take that hands-off approach for their team, and in that is this fire quick thing. I'm just curious. I mean, and this fire quick thing is getting more and more like traction where it's not working. So rather than try and work this out, we're just going to part ways. And I'm just curious, has that entered into your mind, that fire quick thing, or do you tend to be more lenient before you realize somebody's not going to work out on your team?
Well, recently I actually had something like that. Like I kept asking, I knew there was something going on. Like something isn't being authentic. There's something hidden. What is it? And I kept being shut down. Nope, nope, nope. I'm like, And then all of a sudden there's more dots that came up, right? They're really like, you're lying to yourself or you're lying to me or both. And Um,
Yeah.
and so, yes, I prepared for that, prepared for the, all right, because it went so long that it could just explode because
Right.
it was months.
Sure.
And I'm like, wow. And but um this particular instance it didn't, but I prepared for that mentally, like and literally thought that
Sure.
through and actually talked with him. And he's like, so what does that mean? What does that look like for us? And I'm like, well, it could be this, this, and this. It's gonna be rough, but
Yeah.
it's possible, but we'll see. And he was even like, well, I probably should. And I'm like, no, we'll just wait and see. And so I just kind of just made some more opportunities of like, and I spoke up about some specifics that I had heard that kept pointing to, yes, this is an issue. Yes, there's an issue. So I need you to tell me what's going on because this isn't working and this is causing a problem in every layer of what we do and it's got to be dealt with. So what are you going to do
Yeah.
basically? And,
Sure.
and gave the person a day. Would you like the day off to go filter through this to decide? Which meant more work for me. Yes, that day I had to fill in and do other things, but it was maybe we can, salvage this. Maybe we can work through this. I knew it was going to be tough, but just trying to look for those opportunities of was there, and the staff took that and really did, and really went back and went, and really began to self-examine what they hadn't done, and came back and was prepared to say, yep, this is what I did. And now I see I was totally wrong. And I just held, and it was emotion. I had taken this offense, and now so it became like I'm just coming and doing my job and I'm leaving. And I'm like, that doesn't work here. That can't
Right.
happen. And
Yeah.
so it actually turned out beautiful. It was very difficult, but just trying to open up those opportunities. But it all depends on the other people, right? You can't just do it yourself. If it
Yeah.
involves more people, each person has their part to participate. And if they don't want to participate in the let's figure it out and work it out, then again, you have to make your adjustments. But if you can try to make those opportunities for someone to come clean or become self-aware or realize and or apologize and see and willing, again, it's really about willingness and communication. So I'm very thankful that particular situation worked out, but yeah.
And it's like, I mean, as a leader, you set up your team for success, or you can say for failure. And that's what I think is so important of a topic for teams to be listening to, because it starts at the empathy piece. If I see you as, you really are versus how I want you to be, or, there's some lack of empathy there. I don't understand you. I don't want to understand you. That's hard to be successful on a team. It just is, in my opinion, and in the research that I've done. And so that's what I think is so cool is that, everything I heard you say, there was, let's try to find a way to make this work. Let's try to figure this out together rather than let's create an exit strategy and you're going to be gone by the end of the week. And maybe it happens that way. And like you said, you're a direct type person. So you're okay, walking into that, type of situation. But there's plenty of people that are conflict avoiders that are listening right now. So, have you experienced conflict avoiders in your journey? And if you have, how do you deal with them? Because that's tough.
I've been that person.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, that's too much. I don't do that, but in relationships, not at work. But I have had that definitely relationships that it was just because I wasn't at a healthy emotional mental place to be able to do with that because it was just too overwhelming because of my upbringing and I hadn't worked through that stuff. But with there, I'm trying to think if there's one recent. Hmm. I have. Oh, way back. So I used to be an insurance agent way back in the day, and yeah, it was and I had hired someone, and you go through, this is what your job is, this is what your list is, this is your role. And so I had to have a meeting with that person, like, and sit down and go, remember this? We talked, these are these different things, but you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing
Yeah.
this. And they're like, well, okay. Well, I quit. And then they laughed. And I was like, well, I guess so, because you're just not doing the job. But I mean, it turned out to be quite
Oh, that
easy.
was
I was
easy.
like, I know. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to fire this person. And I feel bad, but, we'll just see.
Yeah,
I did kind of like see if there was something there, but there was nothing. They're just like, well, yeah,
sure.
okay. And they were done. I was like,
Yeah.
whew, okay, well, that wasn't too dramatic. I've heard some stories of some pretty dramatic
Wow.
conflict avoiders in that situation.
Yep.
Haven't. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's tough because I mean, and as you are a you're trauma care certified and you are a crisis intervention specialist, those things right there, I feel like you're probably better equipped to deal with. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of people should be trauma care certified. I don't even know what it is. It scares me to ask. But it's like there's a lot of us that deal with crisis and trauma in our daily world. And, there wasn't a course in high school or grade school or college that was like crisis 101, trauma 101, how to deal with this kind of stuff. And so, there are plenty of people listening that they don't know how to deal with that. So, is that trauma care certification and is that specialist in crisis intervention? I mean, are those types of things that you feel helped you as a leader and build your team? I mean, have you been able to utilize some of those pieces in that?
Oh, definitely. I love that you said they don't teach us that in school, because then I'm like, why don't they? Why didn't
Right.
they? We all experience trauma throughout our life, and sometimes too much, so, regardless. And we have to figure it out. And again, how were we brought up? How did we experience relationship and conflict and boundaries in our home? Well, then that's how we deal with the trauma.
Yeah.
And most of us had at least some level of dysfunction in our home. So we're going to some level of dysfunction in handling the trauma.
Right.
So I always say it should be, this is like a duh, like a very obvious thing that should be taught to everyone on some level. So yes, it has definitely helped me, because it's really learning to understand, like I first said, empathy of putting yourself in someone else's place, but also just opening up your mind to understand the differences in people and how we react differently.
Right.
They have these crime shows on TV, and even detectives where, they say, well, they're just not acting like, they're remorseful or whatever. Well, that really has no bearing on whether they're guilty or not. It's what was their upbringing and how they handle intense things, how they handle trauma is how they're going to
Yeah.
respond. And so there is no one way. We all respond differently. Some could get really angry, some could get really emotional and just start bawling and can't make a decision for anything. Some will take control and just like dissociate their own problem but oversee everything else. Everyone responds differently based on what our experiences are, how we've learned to process through difficult situations even before the trauma. So
Sure.
yes, I'm with you on everyone needs to learn. And I don't know if there are actually simple classes out there, like in like a just like a college course. There
Yeah.
should be. I actually don't know if there is. The trauma care certification that I took was specifically geared toward trafficking and working with survivors. But I take a lot from that when I use that when I'm training staff, and actually when I'm training volunteers, saying you don't have to understand, you don't have to know what it was like. You just have
Yeah.
to know what it's like to be a human. And pain is pain. Abandonment's abandonment. Loneliness is loneliness. It doesn't matter what level it was. We understand
Sure.
those emotions, and that's how we can relate to people. And so I feel like I always make it super simple. Like let's just make it simple. This is
Yeah.
really what it's like. And then that helps get away. People get fearful. Like we even talked about being fearful, opening up a hearing, because oh, we don't have you don't have to have answers. But
Yeah.
if you understand those basic emotions from your own circumstances, then we can connect, then we can relate. We don't have to understand their specific circumstance. We just have to understand, oh, being rejected, that does really hurt. Oh, being
Sure.
badmouthed, that stinks. It's not fair, right? We can
Yeah.
understand those things. And so yes, the trauma informed it has been awesome. Crisis intervention, again, someone in an office space, if they're, office spaces or in a team, it is because your people are living life. They're going to experience things. Trauma can happen in the workplace. It happens in schools, right?
Right.
It happens everywhere. It happens on the
Sure.
road.
Yep.
So learning, training, like some of the stuff that you do too, training to be more self-aware, first of all, is the first step
Sure.
for
Yep.
in crisis intervention, but also then being able to read other people and understand what emotion are they expressing right now? What are they going through and how can I help them, level out.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think you brought up something as we start to land the plane today that's just so powerful that I don't want to I don't want to gloss over because I think a lot of people don't get involved because of what you said. They don't know what to say. They don't know what they've done. They can't identify with a person that's been, in trauma in a situation that you guys deal with at Redeem and Restore. So they then say, "Hey, I'm not equipped, therefore I'm not going to do it." I'm
mhm,
guessing there's a fear of volunteering because, man, what if I get put in a spot I don't know what to do? And that's
mhm,
where I think empathy comes in, where you're able to say, I can't necessarily understand what you're going through because I haven't gone through it. But again, to your point, Krista, you're a human being and this had to have sucked. Whatever that is, just that part of identifying rather than, oh, I've been down that exact road. You don't have to be an alcoholic to know what an alcoholic's going through. From a dependency perspective, from a family, what it does to a family. There's so much, damage that can happen from these things. So you see a lot of people like do the I can't get involved because there's that major fear factor.
yeah, and I think that's also why for me, that's why I was trying to make that connection. We even have a special training for that for people who want to be involved more but are kind of afraid and unsure. Like I have a
Yeah,
special training called, Human Trafficking Advocacy 102 class, where really I just share stories of survivors and I share stories of just simple ways and I give examples of that, of how we just connect as a human. They hurt. Okay, so what are your gifts? What can you do? And then everyone doesn't, with our organization, everyone doesn't directly work with victims. Most of the work is doing all the other stuff, running the organization, doing the outreach, speaking, and things like that that isn't direct. But other people don't even get that close, like to take the class or ask the questions. They just go, no thanks, and go and run the other way. Um, but that's it. It's really we don't, and even then again in the workplace, we don't have to know exactly what it feels like. We don't have to know all the details. We don't have to wrap our head around it and fully understand it. It's really just understanding that they're hurting or they're struggling or that I see you and wow, yeah, I'm sorry, having a hard time. And, okay, I'll try to, be a little nicer right now or just give you a little more space or what
sure.
do I need to do to help not make it worse for you. um
Yeah.
with
Wow.
volunteering with us, yeah, there's so many different ways to be involved and really, like I said, um only a handful work directly with the clients that we work with. The rest do all the other stuff, but it's it's good to learn because I think I like to teach them. So that's in me too, is not just teach to work with severe trauma, but really then trying to train other people just to be better people, to
Yeah,
build better relationships, like in your own family and with others or in at work, of being able to understand things and to see things differently. I remember for the longest time, because I had no support growing up, I had nothing. That's why I'm so independent and driven, is because
sure,
that's how I did life. But I felt if I knew it, everyone must know it. And sometimes that came off of like, wow, she's really snooty, snotty. And I'm like, huh? And then I finally, figured it out. It was,
sure.
oh, no, it's the opposite. I'm like, you didn't know? Like, well, I know it. You must know it because I'm not that smart. I haven't figured it out.
Sure,
So I'm assuming everyone, and yet that's how it was taken, that thought I was
sure.
someone so big, and it was totally opposite.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you never know who's on your team. And like we were talking about before, you said it, they're people, they're not employees, they're not numbers, they're not, just people that sit at a desk. They have a life and they have existence and they need us to be able to empathize with them. And, if you struggle with empathy and you're listening, hey, join the club, right? We all have it at some level. And so, I would encourage you, if you're listening and you struggle with it, you know what, find the empathy that you have. Try to do an emotional intelligence assessment because it's going to help you understand your empathy. It's going to help you understand about how you look at other people. And, there's just so much positive that comes out of that. And so that's so cool. Hey, one last question. I'm going to let you go, Krista. What would your tip of the day be for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that we covered. Maybe it's something on your heart. I know you don't like to do these, but I'm going to put you on the spot one last time and think if there's just one thing that you could share with somebody today, what would that be?
Well, it was perfect because actually what you just said just triggered another thing that we didn't exactly, used it a couple times, but applies to everything that we did, is intentionality. We talk about that in business, right? And being intentional and focused in what you do. But I think putting effort in being intentional of looking at the people around you, trying to read what's going on with them. I mean, that's how you can be empathetic, is being intentional. Just like I said, when I can be very busy and I'm doing this, and then sometimes I have to go, oh, whoop, step back, just take a minute and try to be intentional in listening or reading the underlying signs, will be a great benefit to you, because not just for the team, but really the empathy and the intentionality, even for you, just making your day go smoother instead of
Yep.
less stress, less frustrating. Because if you can be more intentional and you can have empathy, you'll be less frustrated because you'll have more understanding of the dynamics that are going on around you, and reading it and then working through it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And until we all work with AI or computers, there are people involved. And so we need to be able to be empathetic as much as possible. So what a great message. Thank you for hanging out with us, Krista. If somebody's listening and they want to learn more about Redeem and Restore Center, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, first, the website, that's the easiest, redeemandrestore.org, because then you can email us, you can, look us up, and obviously the contact information actually goes directly to me. So you can do admin@redeemandrestore.org, but the easiest is find the website, and then you can find the emails, and you can even send a form directly through the website.
There seemed like a ton of stuff to do, a ton of options, a ton of ways to volunteer. So I'm assuming we don't have to just be in Waukesha, Wisconsin to help. So again, I would encourage everybody listening to check out redeemandrestore.org and find a way to, find something that you have a gift. We all have a gift. And maybe, who knows what it is. And I'm sure they would love to unpack that with you. Krista would love to help you any way that she can. So thank you so much, Krista, for hanging out with us. It's a tough subject at times because we all want to talk about the great things that are going on in business, but there's times where there is trauma, there is crisis, and you've done a great job of helping us. Even though you don't like tools and tips, you gave some, so you didn't even know I did it. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for you just dedicated your life to people that are in a tough spot, because that's got to be at times just like overwhelming. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I can't wait to keep watching you guys grow and continue to help. Hopefully one day you won't have a job because there will not be anybody that is involved in human trafficking, and then you'll be looking for something to do. So I can't wait for that day to happen.
Yeah, well, I doubt that. I don't plan on that, but we'll have more homes and I'll just have other people doing more work too, so it'll be good.
That's awesome.
Thank you
Cool.
so
Thank you.
much.
Yep.